Good evening, everypony, and welcome to Commentary as Magic Stream on today's Sunday, February 13th, 2022. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
Big Cheese.
Arcat?
Ivory Starlight, and not the last one this time.
Because today we have special guest.
Hi, I'm Pages.
Hi, Pages. I'm Dad. Look, it can only go uphill from here, okay? We start with the baseline dad humor, and then it only gets better. That's how it works.
Really?
Anyway. Well, that depends on your definition of better.
I see. Hey, Grandpaws, want to pull my hoof?
Wow. Okay. Moving on from that, we are very glad to have you here, Pages, because today we are talking about a topic that you probably more so than many other individuals are kind of an expert on, which is limited. Limited in regards to this game, of course. But before we get deep into discussion on that, would you like to introduce yourself and explain kind of how you came to play this game?
Okay, sure. So I started playing this game without intending to play this game. So back when it first came out, all the way back in 2014?
Yep, that's right.
Something like that. I caught wind of collectible My Little Pony trading cards that was a trading card game. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy a box just to collect. And I discovered that my local game store had a setup for learning how to play the game. So I decided to attend that. And then it just went from there. And at the time, I was mostly a Magic the Gathering player. And it just kind of, I went to that store to play Magic as well. So it just kind of crossed over in a sense.
Sure. And then WotC actually gave you the crossover.
And then it actually did happen, yes. When they made the My Little Pony Magic cards, which I tried to use.
And did. You claimed you were able to successfully use them.
I mean, it's taken a while. But, you know, one of the cards requires that you own a My Little Pony toy or figure with specific colors in it, and it's been about like 3 years, and I still haven't been able to find one that fits.
Obligatory buy our toys.
Obligatory buy their toys.
Except they don't make the right toys.
No, they're like $50. It's nuts.
Make our toys, then buy our toys.
Well, this is the, you need one of the Funko Pops that's got the correct colors on it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I want to lug a Funko Pop to everywhere I play card games. Also Funko Pops.
Right? I mean, is it really that different than people lugging plushies everywhere they go to play card games?
But, like, plushies have style?
They do.
That's Rainbow Dash always dresses in style.
Unless she's a Funko Pop.
Not to say that Funko Pops don't have style, but I can't say I agree with the style.
That's fair. Well, thank you for that introduction. And now let's go ahead and briefly introduce the topic for today, or rather define the topic for today, because some people may not be familiar with the term limited. Ara?
Okay, so we're going to go through the TLDR, and limited is basically anything where you don't bring a pre-constructed deck ahead of time and build on the spot during the tournament from a small pool of cards that you are given at the event. There are basically two main formats here. The first is sealed, which may be known as pre-release in some places, where you just get 8 to 10 packs depending. You open those and then you get to build your deck out of that. The other way you can do this is you get a bunch of people crowded around a table called a pod, and you open a pack. And you take a card, and then you pass the remaining cards to one of the people on either side of you. And you will get past a deck with one of the cards removed, and you repeat this until the deck is gone.
And then you open another pack.
And then you open another pack, and so on and so forth until you've gone through usually 4 packs. There is a slight variant of this where all of these previous things, you're paying in some nominal fee for the cards, but you can also, and then you take those home at the end of the day. Now, there's also another version of this that's sometimes referred to as a phantom draft, where one person has just entirely too many cards and says, okay, we'll play a limited game with these, but then just give them all back when we're done. So if any of you are sitting on very large piles of packs with nothing to do with them, well, there's an idea.
Yeah. Phantom drafts are a lot of fun and are also the primary method that is used when drafting in a cube, which we will talk about here in a moment. It's probably worth also mentioning that there are variants that we've seen of sealed as well. Although it is more commonly done around pre-release, sometimes players do just play in sealed. And it's especially fun when you get 3 people together and give them a smaller than normal card pool and call it Team Sealed.
That is fun.
And then build for the memes. And then Cheese builds blue-purple control, or purple-blue control, always.
Builds gohome.deck.
Go home!
He does that in all sealed, not just team sealed, and also in draft. And also, why do we let Cheese play again?
Because he
It
also does that in
works.
constructed.
Question still stands.
Well, that just means that you should select a sealed format filled with sets that don't allow you to do that.
This is a nice...
Premier block sealed?
This is actually a rather interesting segue into another point here. The packs that go into any one of these formats can have a wild effect on how the tournament will play out, what kind of decks you might see, what kind of things you can build even. Now,
Sure.
I'm terrible for this, but I rather liked the Canterlot Knights Premier format of
You're
draft.
a monster. You're a monster.
No, I
This
am
is
not.
terrible.
There is a perfectly viable strategy for this, and I was probably one of the only people to realize it. Pegasi
What were
are
it?
pretty good. And you know what's even better than Pegasi? A main that says Swift on its boosted side.
Yeah, but you can accomplish the same thing in Crystal Games Sealed, which is clearly a far superior format.
No.
I
absolutely
disagree.
not.
I also disagree. Crystal Games is a terrible format.
Crystal Games Limited was not great.
I think that's putting it politely. Like,
Absolute Discord and everything after it got much better.
they did get much better.
Up until Marks in Time, where you could play 2 colors. And only 2 colors.
Yeah, if Marks in Time is involved, your colors are blue and orange.
Orange.
That's kind of it.
Unless you somehow pull a bunch of factory jacks.
Well, sure, but then you're, pulling the trading traditions, playing the factory jacks, and pivoting into blue. Because of course.
Right. Yeah, it is really fascinating looking at the various sets, and especially the sets that are in close proximity to each other that you might see some crossover within a format. It's usually more fun after a block has been filled out by several sets to draft with, say, maybe 2 packs from the most recent set and then 1 or 2 packs from each of the preceding sets in the same block. Blocks generally have overall themes or cycles or concepts that are spread across all three sets, usually, not always. And being able to see that helps keep the format a little more balanced. It also adds some good diversity because I feel like when you are playing in a limited environment, the cards that are most desirable or most powerful, especially when it is only out of a single set, can lead to some pretty polarizing decks where people, I don't know, play in Defenders of Equestria and end up with 3 Berry Punches and Orange Swirls and 3 Belly Flops.
Hi.
Or like Sonnet did at pre-release, where she got at least 2, if not 3 Sweetie Bells and just played Mill in Limited.
That seems good.
It was good.
For her.
For her. Correct.
Yeah, Mill does get better in limited, that's sure.
There are some archetypes that just get better in limited. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is?
Mm-hmm. Or anyone.
Well, in the case of limited, it's because, don't forget, in limited environments, your deck size is 30 and not 45.
Well, minimum 30.
Minimum 30 and minimum 45. But because the minimum is such, most of the time you'll just want to play just those 30 cards. Which means that you would deck out a lot faster than you normally would.
Yeah, this being limited where sometimes you're sitting there going, well, so I've got 28 cards I want to play. What do I do with these last 2 card slots? I gotta put something here. I don't know. Let's see. What's got big numbers in the corner?
Correct. Flip 6s.
Can't play this card, but it's got a big number in the corner.
Yeah, and then sometimes you might end up doing something like draft, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 of the same card. Which you can then all play.
Which gets pretty strong.
Leads to shenanigans.
This does it does lead to shenanigans. I'm trying to remember what I've seen that's had so many copies being drafted. I think Granny Smith was probably up there.
Yeah.
Every time.
It's just a good card in limited.
It's a dumb card. It is worth mentioning, though, that the focus on what cards are most desirable and what cards you will expect people to pick in a limited environment or, select out of their pool can often be dramatically different from what you would see in constructed. Because limited decks overall are going to be less consistent. You don't have a guaranteed perfect suite of entry. You don't have your 2 to 3 pieces of resource removal and 5 to 6 pieces of friend disruption, and then your big bombs that'll end up winning you the game. Nor do you have an efficient recursion engine or point scoring engine. You kind of have to play things off the cuff.
Right.
And so, go ahead.
You may end up with a deck where you're just like, well, I have maybe a good trick here, and otherwise my strategy is I'm playing aggro. And sometimes you get incredibly lucky and pull 2 Thunder Lanes. And proceed to just start mopping the place up, because in limited, sometimes even just a single rare, if it hits the field, will just completely swing the momentum.
Or you draft 2, what were they? The Thunder Lanes.
That's what he just said.
Okay.
It's literally what he just said.
Literally. And figuratively. And
I want to figuratively draft Thunder Lane outside of Marks and Time.
There's other stuff like entry into desirable colors. Sometimes just getting a hold of some of that's just like, ooh.
Drafting entry is always one of the most interesting games to play in a limited format because you have to weigh the consequence of having a card that in many cases isn't going to do a whole lot by itself but will allow all your other cards to do things, versus having a really, really big payoff card that you are less likely to be able to actually play at any given point in time.
Right, so it has most of the same concerns as building a deck for Constructed, but since you have less control over what's going into your limited pool, it can be more difficult. But we think that there is a possible solution to this, or if nothing else, maybe a different way to play Limited.
You want to talk about that?
Well, as
Or should we have-
Grandpa's let me introduce this concept for people who are maybe not familiar. Grandpa's alluded to this earlier with a cube. Now, what is a cube, you ask? Well, it is a curated selection of cards, which, instead of relying on whatever you happen to get out of all these packs, you have a predefined set of cards that you build packs out of, and then people proceed as normal, either with sealed or draft, using these custom constructed packs. The advantages to this are obviously you can control what goes into them, even to the point of having specific things that you want in any given pack. Like, let's say you have a pack that wants some pink entry and maybe a good orange rare, etc. But this is getting into something that I think Pages knows quite a bit more about than I do, if I'm going to be honest. So maybe I should step aside and let Pages take the stage here.
Okay, so if you'd ever played, or if you were a Magic the Gathering fan, you may have heard of the concept of the cube before, which is, as already stated, is just a curated set of cards, as in you get to pick what goes into it, and then you build packs out of it. That's true. So one day I was thinking, well, if I play cube in Magic quite often, why not try making one for the MLP CCG? So I then spent the next, I don't know, year or two trying to grab a list of cards, either through trading or opening packs, or from my own collection. And eventually got to the point where I collected enough cards in order to actually build the cube and host my own drafts, either at my local game store or at conventions I attended and brought. And so I would bring the cube with me, and then we would set up in the CCG room, and we would run drafts out of the cards that I selected. So because you get to select the cards that goes into your possible draft pool, that means you could literally pick whatever you want. I've had conversations with somebody who wanted to make an entirely pink cube, as in he only wanted to have pink cards in it.
Oof.
Now, I may have or may not have called him a madman at some point, but that's the possibilities are whatever you want to whatever you want to do, whatever you want to have people play. It's all up to you and whatever cards you decide to put in it. For me, what I wanted to do was I wanted to just make a cube with not entirely all the best cards, but I'm not, I put a bunch of them in there. Right? So I grabbed, this card looks fun. I remember that, people enjoyed playing this strategy back in the days of, Counterlot Knights. So I'll include some cards that would allow you to do that strategy, except just in a draft instead of a constructed format. So I went through kind of like the whole history of the game, all the sets, and then picked out the whole list of cards. And I think right now there's like 800 cards in there.
800 unique individual cards?
800 pretty much unique individual cards. Now that's not to say that you can't include, for example, I don't know, like 10 copies of Berry Punch and Orange Swirl if you wanted to.
Yes.
But I mean, how else are you going to make the only pink cube work? But generally, most people, or not most people, but generally in a cube, you would include only one copy of each card.
Right, and this
Yep.
this I think leads from Magic's tendency for cubes to include some of the incredibly rare things.
Yes.
Cards that literally have 4-figure price tags in some cases.
Right, and I also attempted to bling out my cube as much as I could by finding promo copies of cards, foil versions of cards. There are some cards that are extremely difficult to get, but one day I will get them. I think they're the Australian Continentals foil version of a card or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, Lyra and Bonbon, the
Yup.
promo version of that. Yeah, that's tricky to get
One day.
someday.
That and the 2013 champion stamped Nightmare Moon.
One day. But that doesn't mean that, all cubes have to be constructed the same, just like the mono pink cube, right? If you enjoyed a draft format, then there's nothing stopping you. Then you can create a cube out of that specific draft format. For example, like Aura, I kind of enjoyed the Premier Counterlot Knights draft environment, as slow and drudgy as it was. So I could put in only cards from Premier and Counterlot Knights, and there's nothing stopping you from saying, oh, this card is a common, so I'll include like 3 copies of it in my cube. Oh, this card's uncommon, I'll include 2 copies of it. And this is a rare or an ultra rare, and I'll include like 1 copy of it to create kind of like a more structured cube draft format where it's like, yeah, I enjoyed playing this set so much, I'll just make a cube out of it so I can draft it forever. Means you don't have to go around looking for unopened, sealed, packs of that set in order to actually play the format you want to play. You can just reuse these ones over and over again.
That's a very good point. Something that players might forget is that for commercially produced card games, sets aren't always continuously printed. There is a finite print run associated with sealed product for those sets. And for AAA card games like Magic, it can be a little easier to find, especially in modern day if they weren't limited releases. But even still, I think a Magic print run only goes for about 2 years at the most. And it may not even go that long.
Sure. And there's also a rather significant lineage there. So yeah, alpha print draft?
Yeah. Nope.
Let me know how much fun that entry fee is.
Nope. I'm not even going near that.
Just no.
Just no. When you have to break out the linen gloves to even be able to handle the booster pack before you've taken the cards out of it, nope. Not for me.
Considering the going rate for an alpha pack is $7,000,
Is it that low? I thought it had broke 5 figures now.
that's the most recent sale of one. I'm sure there's an actual value scale being used to determine that.
That's fair.
So suffice to say that rarity of product to use in limited formats can be a constraint.
Yeah. So, Pedros, that was a great introduction to why you built your cube. What is it about cubes for the My Little Pony collectible card game that differ from other collectible card games?
Ponies are much cuter.
Yeah, ponies are much cuter. That I will not deny. Some of the art on very, popular Magic cards might get a little too not cute. But so most of the experience I've had with Cube has been through Magic the Gathering, so I'll do comparisons mostly to that. The major differences, or some of the major things that I have to think about, are how many cards are there in a typical pack of My Little Pony, the card game, and how many colors are there. So, for example, Magic the Gathering packs come in 15 cards a pack, and there are 5 different colors in that game. Right? In MLP-CCG, there's only 12 cards in a pack, and there are 6 colors. So you have to, unless you want to take all of your cards, shuffle all, 800 of them together, and then just take 12 random cards and slam them into a pack and call it a day. Some of the problems with that might be that you will end up with a draft where, for example, there might not be any yellow cards.
Simply because the odds fell against Yellow's favor.
Right. And sometimes, and you may want to play it like that, or you may not. For most of the Magic the Gathering cubes that I've played in, whoever constructed or owns the cube would try to fit in at least 1 or 2 of each color into one pack. So because there are 5 colors and 15 cards to deal with, that's actually somewhat simple. For example, you could put in 2 of each color, and then you'd still have 5 slots left over in that pack to put in whatever else you want. Colorless cards, more of the same, more of one color, etc. But because in MLP-CCG, you have 6 colors and 12 slots, that doesn't really work the same way, because you also have other card types that you have to deal with, like troublemakers, problems as well. One of the issues, remember, I think we've all had grumbled about this at some point, especially in Premier Camelot Knights early eras, where you open a pack and there are 3 or 4 problems in that pack.
I think
Right.
it's possible in Absolute Discord to end up with 5 problems in a 12-card pack.
Right, and when you see that, that's not that much fun, right? Because you want to draft for cards, that you are playing with in your main deck and not really your problem deck. And that was, I think, a big problem in the early stages of drafting, where everybody would just pick whatever card wasn't a problem, and then at the end, you just have everybody with only problems left, and then you just pick whatever and went with it. So there's a lot more difficulty in that sense, because there's a lot more card types that you have to deal with that don't, work the same way.
Yep.
Right. And one significant thing about Magic is that it's kind of assumed that you have a set of lands, or the payment, I guess, on the side that you can add to your limited pool later. Whereas in Pony, the rough equivalent is entry.
Of which I have never played in a limited environment that has provided entry for free for players.
No.
It's
a thing
not
that
true.
you play around with.
Not true. You, I'm pretty sure, have played with the Marks in Time pack drafter things, where you get the one copy of Kevin.
Yep.
That's fair.
Oh yeah, I forgot that Kevin was a thing given in those.
That's a foil, Kevin.
That was actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah. For those who don't know, at one point there was a product sold that had 4 packs.
Yep.
4 booster packs, 1 foil Kevin, and 1 Cutie Mark Crusader main.
Only one of which was good.
Correct.
Kevin says, when this card is played, choose the color. It's that color. 2 power.
And you hoped to God that you got the Scootaloo pack.
Because
Nah,
the
give me
other
that
two
apple
were
bloom.
terrible.
No, you don't do that. You very quickly house rule that if you're going to use the Pack Drafter main, you either get to use whichever one you want, meaning Scootaloo, or you're just not allowed to use those. Because Scootaloo was kind of good. To the point where the limited rules for Pony actually suggest that you not allow her to be used currently.
Right, in a format where the power level of characters, or the friends that you play cards out of your deck, typically isn't that high. One of the things that gets valued a lot is being able to use your AT, very efficiently. And what's more efficient than moving 2 friends for free?
That's like 4 AT of value.
It's like 4 AT of value.
Every single turn cycle.
That's almost better than... Actually, no, that is probably just straight up better than having Swift on your main.
Yeah, probably. You can move your main for free, and you can get back up there after DFOing, and it's just dumb.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you could take just, one slice of 12 cards out of the collection of cards you've assembled after you shuffle it all and slam them into one pack. Or you could, so what most people I've seen do is seeding their packs, which means that, like I said, you put in X amount, like 1 or 2 of each color, and then fill the rest of the pack out with some other things. And that way, at least you're guaranteed of having a somewhat even distribution of colors or cards that support whatever color combination you like, or whatever. If you like blue and you don't see any blue ever because there weren't any blue in any of the packs, you might feel a little sad.
So you're influencing the odds a little bit here.
Yeah, just a bit. Although I do kind of want to try the other way, where you just, like I said, you just shuffle a bunch of cards together, and then you just grab 12 random ones and throw them in. I just want to see what happens, but I think that's a little too much volatility for my liking. But one of the major problems, personally, that I thought of about MLP CCG drafting was the fact that everybody just left problems at the end. So you really had, you would open a pack and have 7 functional cards to pick from because the rest of them were all problems. In both senses of the word.
Yep. So how did you get around this?
The way I got around this was because, you have to include problems in one way or another. Because if you just said, oh, okay, we're just going to use the proxiable problems that you're allowed to in standard drafts, then most of the time what happens is that everybody just ends up with 5 of the same problem that doesn't really do anything interesting. So, that would be kind of boring as well. It's like having like 5 copies of, I don't know, 8 card pile up, or 5 copies of Trading Traditions, or 5 copies of Searching High and Low. That's not interesting.
Okay, hold on.
Every
hold
cube
on.
should have 12 copies of Trading Traditions.
Holding.
Maybe. I was going to say something similar about you're giving me a 5-card problem deck that's all Trading Traditions, or a 5-card problem deck that's all Searching High and Low, and I'm playing Skystar. Deal.
I mean,
5 copies of Trading Traditions. Well, entry for the cards I'm picking stopped being an issue.
Yep.
yeah. The darn shame that Skystar is going to be sitting there just, rubbing her little flippers together with glee, though.
You are right, though, that would not necessarily create an interesting decision for players to make. And we actually have a comment here in chat. Fanman says that they thought with the problems being part of what characters they would choose. So I think what they're saying is that they would choose problems based on their main, which you do to a point, but part of the issue with that is that problems in general are the card type that you are least likely to be able to control or manipulate. The number of cards that interact with your problem deck and allow you some method of control over that are among the smallest of any category of card that you can interact with.
Right, and in my experience, it's not very often. I'd probably say it's pretty rarely that you would look at a pack of cards and pick a specific problem over most of the pack. Depends
On-
if, the problem is insanity.
or if it's
Like,
trading
yep,
traditions.
or if it's trading traditions. Like, there are some problems that are so good that you would pick them over other cards.
Final question.
Final question. But in my experience, yeah, it hasn't been that often that you would see something like that, because a lot of the time those problems are like rare.
Right.
And like a lot of the times you don't know really what color or what main character you'd be playing until much later. So you also kind of have to hope that either the problem fits within your colors already, or the problem is so good that it makes you want to play those colors instead.
That's true, yeah. And you bring up a good point that we will definitely be addressing here later in the stream, which is that your philosophy of which cards you are choosing can dramatically change given what you see at any particular point within the draft.
Right. So my solution to, well, I don't want to see problems in, the regular packs I open, was that I would take all the problems I would have assembled, and then I would make packs out of just only the problems. And then I would include that one pack of problems per player into the packs that you draft. So, in a standard My Little Pony draft, you would have 4 packs of whatever was, whatever you would crack open and see in a standard pack that you would buy. In my cube, you would have 4 packs of cards that don't have any problems in them. And then at the end, there's one pack that only has problems. So at the end, you would have drafted about 12 problems for you to choose from. And that means like you don't have to pick problems over cards. So you can weigh the problems against other problems that, you can see. And that should, in my opinion, that would have made it so that you would end up with interesting problems and, strong problems that you would want to play. So you don't end up with 5 of the same problem.
That's a great way of handling that.
Right, and I think because those are being drafted at the end, you already have a pretty good idea of what your deck's color identity is going to be.
Right, so you can kind of focus your attention towards, that problem is in my colors, and so that means I can take it and be able to play, problems that are good for your strategy and are interesting, and not just like, oh, it's playable, so it automatically goes in, which was kind of what the problem I saw was in standard drafts.
Right. Although I think that you have a handful of places where you have specifically violated that rule. Trading traditions.
Trading traditions.
Sure.
But there is always the possibility that you end up with a set of problems that you just can't play. Right? There's always the kind of slight risk where that happens, and in that sense, you'll always have the option to use proxy problems in one way or another. Right? And in the standard draft rules, or standard limited rules, it says that you could have any combination or any number of proxiable problems typically chosen from a list. And in my cube, or in the way that I like to run it, because I want to incentivize people playing problems that aren't just your normal, four color starting problem, or four colors, sorry, four wild starting problem, and only have those, only 5 of those. And I said, okay, you can only have one you can only have one problem that you pick from a proxy list. And then you have to, the other 4, you actually have to have drafted in some way or another.
Yeah, I feel this makes the problem decks in limited much better. Like in
Yeah.
normal draft or sealed, they're kind of terrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much more
Because,
interesting than sitting there with a rack of Buckball championships just going, I hope you like 6s.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is probably one of the more elegant solutions that I think your cube has come up with to address a pretty common problem. No pun
Thank you.
intended.
Boo!
What?
Now, I suppose it's probably worth reinforcing here that you have 800 plus cards in your cube. And every
Yes.
time a new set comes out, you have to sit there, look at that set, and make decisions as for what cards you would like to include. And if you're trying to maintain any kind of balance with your cube, which, as we have seen, you clearly are, you can't just keep throwing more and more cards in the cube. Stuff has to come out as well. And you need to have an idea of what you're removing and what you're putting in. How on earth do you manage this?
Well, I like my spreadsheets.
Go on.
So because I want to be able to catalog everything, not to say that you have to do this if you want to make your own cube, but I believe it's a pretty good idea because you want to remember what you put in there. So I may have gone a little overboard.
You went full Twilight?
Some people may have said I've gone a little overboard with this, but it was my goal to catalog everything I put into it, just so I could, keep track of things like I want to make sure that all the colors are represented equally, including the multicolored cards. I want to make sure that there's enough entry, right? Because you don't get to proxy entry, you have to make sure that you have a lot of cool cards that you've collected and want to play with, but you still have to make sure that you can actually play them. So, I have to keep track of, do I have enough entry to, make the drafting experience enjoyable, which is one of the harder parts of kind of assembling a cube for MLPCCG compared to Magic the Gathering. Right? That's one major thing, in my opinion, that you have to keep track of. And, to ensure an enjoyable experience, like I said. And, like sometimes you may or may not have a bias for a certain best pony or not. So maybe somebody comes up and is like, hey, how come there are no like Fluttershy cards? Maybe your answer would be because Fluttershy is worst pony.
Why are there no Izzy cards?
Because
I don't
we
think that's
haven't
my
made
place
them,
to answer.
we haven't made them yet.
Right. Or, other things that you have to consider are all my orange cards massive? Are they playable? Not in the sense that are they good or not, but in the sense of, can I actually play the card?
Isn't full steam in the cube?
Yes.
You gotta
Don't
put
worry
full
about
steam in the cube.
Of course.
The classic.
Right?
Every cube deserves a couple of meme cards.
Of course.
And hey, he's entry too, so he's not even a bad card, so don't sit here and badmouth full steam.
I mean, he costs 4, but then again, this is a limited environment where what would normally be a huge investment in a liability is suddenly an asset. You move that once, well, that confronts trading traditions on its own.
Right? So other things that I wanted to have in my cube as part of my philosophy is I wanted as many strategies available as possible. So, for example, that means that I want to have an aggressive strategy and a defensive strategy for every color. So, if you want to play blue control, blue something control, I wanted that to be possible. If you wanted to play purple aggro, I also wanted that to be possible. So, I wanted to keep track of everything I was putting in just to make sure that every strategy that I wanted to be available was still possible. If you want to play troublemaker control, well, I better make sure that I have enough troublemakers to make that viable. Now, you could, for example, remember, because you can make it anything you want. You can make it control only cube or aggro only cube. If you wanted your fast games, if you wanted your chess games, if you want to play just war and only, fight troublemakers all day, you could do that. As long as you make sure that you keep track of what you put in there so you can make sure that actually works.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see in my own cube experiments and in yours and the discussions we have regarding it. You do a very good job of identifying sub-themes within a color or a pair of colors. What are the things that this color does? What are the things that this color pair happens to do? And is there enough support for that archetype, that limited archetype within that color or colors without eliminating any other possibility?
Right. And also, you also want to make sure that, or at least in what I want to do, I also wanted to make sure that the colors kind of feel like they're colors, right? So, for example, what is yellow known for in general? There's critters, lots of critters. For example, wouldn't it be weird, in my opinion, what I thought is wouldn't it be weird if all the yellow was just big yellow dudes?
It would be interesting.
That would be interesting. And like I said, you could do that. But I just wanted to make sure that the colors played to kind of the strengths of those colors. So in that case, you can see that there's a lot of small yellow friends, mostly in the 1 or 2 cost and 1 or 2, or about the 2 power ratio area. And then if you look over at something like orange, where their cards typically cost more, I wanted to make sure that the colors still felt like the colors and not just oh, hey, I think this card is cool, let's slam it in times 800. And
Right.
then you end up with something that kind of looks cool, but doesn't play cool.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of effort that has to be spent in balancing that and testing as well. The play testing that you did when you first built this cube, you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. So, the first time I completed it, I brought it out to my local playgroup and said, "Hey, here's this new format that I want to try out, featuring all of my cards. So you don't have to bring any, although 800 cards is quite heavy, and you don't have to pay for it." It's wow, a draft format, like a limited format, you don't have to pay money for. Let's try it out. So now, testing a cube is kind of difficult in the sense that you have to set it up again every time you play. But so I just played it with my local play group a few times just to see, what people would gravitate towards, and I would like to see, what kind of decks they made, what cards that they didn't play with, and I would just kind of watch it all happen. I think of all the times I've actually brought the cube somewhere or played it, I actually haven't played it that many times because I would rather watch other people play it. and take notes to see what kind of things would happen, or what they would pick and what they would do.
You've always been pretty attentive during those cube events.
Yeah, so I walk around, take a look to see what people were playing, and then I would, at the end, I would kind of do a little evaluation of what cards people just didn't seem to pick. For whatever reason, I would get people's opinions of how their games went, and then I would go back to my list of cards, and I would go down the list again and see. All right, now I have a new set coming up. Oh no! Sometimes I dread a new set coming out just because I know I'm gonna have to do this a bunch. But I would consult my list of cards and go, okay, this card nobody seems to like to play. Let's take a look to see what other cards I can put in, either from a new set or from other cards that I've had before. And I'll throw those in. And then next time we play, I'll see whether or not people pick it again. So what I have here is how, for example, I keep track of all the problems that are in the cube. Some people may call excessive.
Those people have never run a cube before.
Sometimes I'm inclined to agree with, that, but that's just kind of how I decided to do things, right? Just as a reminder, you don't have to go through this much in order to build your own cube, but it's just kind of what I ended up doing. And while I dread this, the release of a new set, in the end, I kind of enjoy doing it because I like to look at what I have, all my inventory, and say, okay, what can I have to choose between this card and that card. In a sense, it's kind of like deck building, except that instead of having to build a deck of 60 cards, I've built a deck of like 800 cards.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Right. So, things I like to consider is every set represented in some way or another? As we get more sets, older sets start to lose their luster because, frankly, a lot of those cards aren't very good. Or
So
things like, do I have every color represented in some way or another? You may notice that there's only one blue and orange problem. I
it's
think that's the
there.
best I could have done.
That's fair.
Right. Are there, how about the problem bonuses? Are, what if purple had a gajillion 0 point bonus problems? Is that what I want to see? I want to make sure that there's some kind of a spread, right? And then am I including enough starting problems just in case something weird happens?
Sure.
I think Max here has brought up a good point. What if I want to play with some banned cards? Are those included?
Why not?
Why not? Typically, cards in Constructed get banned because they are too good in some way or another, or they lead to some really not fun gameplay. But that's typically because you can include 3 of that card, and that makes up whatever 3 out of 45 percentage of your deck. And then cards that, may help you find those cards, and the key here is consistency.
Right. Being able to build a 45 or 50 card deck in Constructed allows you to tailor it exactly to whatever your play strategy is. That means you can have the perfect entry suite, you can have all the disruption, all the protection, whatever it is, or whatever effect was so powerful that it got these cards banned in the first place.
Right. Now, if memory serves, Page's Cube actually includes most of the pieces, if not all of them, for several notable and problematic combo engines.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? You gotta collect them all first.
And that's real hard to do, especially when, and this is a discussion that would, really require another stream, but when your draft partners are, well, not partnered, but the other drafters are consciously aware of what cards you are taking.
It's like, oh, there was a Gilda in the draft pool. Maybe I
Let
should
me go ahead and
maybe,
take this minuet.
I'm going to go ahead and take this Tantabus just to make sure.
Right. As Prism Light has correctly pointed out, see the purple problems. There is a banned purple problem in there. I believe it's I Need Answers.
Yep. There it is.
Right. What was the problem with I Need Answers?
Tokens.
Tokens.
You could send Breezies to the grave with it.
I mean, that was the normal use case. The broken use case was, yeah, tokens.
Right. But in this case, it's a lot harder to actually, pull that kind of thing off. And a lot of banned cards still have utility outside of the reason they were banned. So in that sense, I have included quite a few cards that are actually banned and constructed, because if you don't have consistent ways of pulling them out, they don't seem as problematic as they used to be.
Right. Like, a lot of them are fine as long as you're not trying to do something with them. And it's very difficult to do something with them in a limited format.
Right. Another example, I think Interdimensional Portal is still banned in some formats. Not anymore?
It was banned in like pre-rotation core, but it is legal in Adventure. I think the only thing it's banned in is EO block, and I don't even know if it's banned there.
I think it's
Right.
only in core.
But at the time it was banned, it was still an inclusion in the cube because it was a lot harder to abuse.
Right.
I think Tantabus, the Cello Maker, is still in this cube.
It is.
And somebody became very close to, assembling the Monopoly set and having that strategy work.
It was me. I had 3 of the 4 cards.
Ha ha ha.
I was so close.
But, unlike Monopoly, you can't trade your cards to each other.
Right.
So it's a lot harder to actually assemble.
Yeah.
Right? That's 4 cards out of like 800.
Those cards have to be in the selection of cards that are actually being drafted.
Yeah,
Right.
You will notice that there's, I think, 821 cards in here. That's a very large number of packs, and if you are not consuming all of those packs, you don't even know if you've got all the pieces.
Yep.
And you don't have to make a cube that large, right? You should make a cube dependent on how many players you want to play with, and how many cards you want to see over and over again. For example, with I designed this cube to be played with 12 players, not all at once, but as in 2 pods of 6, because I intended to bring this cube to conventions and play them in larger groups, which is something I did a lot back in 2019.
Makes sense.
Before times.
The before times, yes.
So to accommodate 12 players, I needed to make 48 packs of 12 cards, plus 60 plus more problems. So that means I had to find at least 144 problems to make the 12 packs of 12 problems each. And I also wanted to have a little bit more variance, so I don't see the same cards over and over and over again. So if you remember from the first picture here, there are the percentage tells me on the left how much of a set of cards is being included in the draft pool at any one time. So I can see that there are about, I think, 55 of each color, and I have to include 48 of those in every time I run a draft, according to kind of what the what I decided were the distributions of each of the packs. Something like 48 or 52 out of the 55 cards for each color gets used. So, you may want to play a certain strategy involving a certain card, but that card may either have been already drafted or may not even be available for selection. So that kind of helps with not having previously problematic strategy to show up again. Just to make sure somebody doesn't, get to or try to draft Cantabuse every time or force, bounce strategies every time.
Right.
So it's pretty hard to play the same strategy or archetype every time you play this.
Which is one of the things that gives that cube such high replay value as well. You can't go in there assuming that you're going to have access to the same cards every time, or that no one else is going to try picking them. And so even when there are preferred strategies of numerous players, or there are cards that players might feel are objectively, better decisions, if those cards don't come up at the right time, or if there's a pack one, pick one, and you don't get it and your opponent does, that might dramatically change things from game to game. So.
Right. And on the flip side, you don't want to include too many cards because you still have to carry all these around, and you need to find some kind of thing to hold all of your cards in. So in this case, I think I use about 86% of the cards every time I create enough packs for 12 players.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to have 12 players every time I play. If I only have 6 players, then, I'll use half the packs now. And the next time I play, I'll use the other half of the packs. Or you can play it with pretty much like any number of players if you wanted. Just like how there are many different types of limited formats that you can play with, like 2 players, 4 players, 6 players. You can do the same thing with a cube because, in essence, the cube is just a bunch of packs that you would use for limited anyways.
Yep. Well, I will definitely look forward to playing that cube again at some in-person events later this year, assuming we can get it and you there.
Assuming that we can travel around and be comfortable with
BabsCon!
Yeah.
That would be nice. Right? I remember, I think it was last year or a couple of years ago, where on Meticulous Talks, I believe it was Cursed Chords and we played a 2-player draft format that was kind of unlike typical limited formats we see in MLP-CCG. And that's, another way of playing limited that is possible with the cube as well. I believe it was called the Winston Draft.
Oh, yes. I remember that video.
Right. And,
that was fascinating.
That's right. And you could also play, we mentioned earlier, Team Sealed, where you have, 3 players per team, and you had a specific number of packs that you have to distribute the cards between your teammates. You could do that. You could play Team Draft, which is you have 2 teams of 3 and you sit alternately away from each other, and you just draft as normal. But then you play like it was a Team Sealed.
And share a card pool.
Actually, the card pool isn't shared in this format, but you would play, your team would play A versus A, B versus B, and C versus C, and you just rotate like that.
Ah, got it.
Really, I think the possibilities are pretty limitless as long as you find creative ways enough to use the fact that you have cards in a pack.
Well, there's clearly a lot of ways to enjoy limited environments. And every player is going to have certain formats that they like, certain cards that they like playing with, certain strategies they might try to go for. And provided that the format has been structured in such a way that it allows that variety, everyone can find some enjoyment. As kind of an example of how we may have differing philosophies and there may still be shared strategy, I think we wanted to take a look at a couple of sample packs here and get the opinions of those currently on stream as for which cards they might pick first or what sort of pick order they might have if this pack was to rotate around in draft. Is that correct, R?
Well, that's what I've got queued up here. I think Ivory already cheated and looked at one, but let's take a look and see what we got here. All right, ready, set, pack one. Also, ensure that you've got your cards and make sure you've got 12 of them.
Yes.
Don't take 2. No, we're passing to the left, not the right.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Okay, there's the pixels.
Okay, so the pack's heavier on blue and yellow than the other colors. There is no true entry here, although you do have both Solo Mare and Angel Wings that can get into play through other methods. But Solo Mare is one of the more restrictive. I'm probably pick oneing Featherweight, though.
I was leaning towards Featherweight myself, though I kind of wish I could take Happy Trees just because.
Guess which card I'm taking?
Happy Trees?
Yes.
Yeah, Cheese will take Happy Trees. So if you're in a pod with him, take that just so he can't have it. But I really feel like I'd end up going with Featherweight.
I think the Eager is just so valuable.
Eager is so good.
Also, the one yellow wreck is pretty important in this case.
Right. If you choose a yellow main, you are guaranteed to be able to play that card at any point over the game.
Right. So that does incentivize you to, go in there. As if Featherweight being yellow wasn't incentive enough.
Yeah, it's not a bad choice.
It is important to take some context in here. If this is pack one, pick one. I'm going to be looking at Featherweight a lot harder than I would be if that was anywhere else. Like, yellow has to be in my color identity currently for me to really look at Featherweight. Beyond that, and there's nothing in here that I'm just like, I really, really, really don't want any of my people I'm playing with to have this.
Hate drafting on pack 1 is a pretty powerful play.
P1 hate draft.
Maybe.
You also have to,
if it's that good, you just pick it.
Yeah, I think at that point it's not hate drafting. I think that just kind of becomes what you're playing.
Right.
Yeah, because hate drafting is oh, this would hurt my deck, or this would hurt. It's not my strategy, and it's really good.
Right. And so that's what I was saying about context. Pack one, pick one. Yeah, Angel Wings, Featherweight, or Solo Mare all seem like reasonable choices. The other cards
may have better effects, but they are greedier picks.
Yes. And then Prismlight in the chat says, grab the Troublemaker. It's valid. Having a Troublemaker in limited games when people are generally going to be playing aggro is not a bad thing. Because you drop that at the right time, that's you just bought yourself a turn at least. So
yeah, I think there's consistency versus upside.
Right. Now, nothing in here, I believe, says resource removal.
It does not.
So, yeah. I think our consensus here is we're leaning pretty heavily towards the entry in Featherweight because Featherweight's just a really good card.
If you're relatively inexperienced with drafting, or if you want a little bit of safety in any ways, right, you may want to prioritize being able to actually play your cards, or being able to having a kind of direction as so you know like what you're trying to go for, right? If you can early on say, okay, I think I have an idea of what I want to do, then it's not as confusing to draft.
Right. Because picking featherweight here is just generally pretty good. That doesn't commit you to yellow. Your next pack may come around and you might be like, well, guess I'm not using that featherweight because I'm definitely going blue now.
If featherweight was not here, I would probably still take Solo Mare, just because it is the card that I am most likely to be able to play regardless of what my other deck is, because the odds of drawing even a individual card out of a 30-card deck are going to be much better than the odds of drawing that out of a 45-card deck. And even if I can't use her main phase ability to put her into play, it still has Calming, and Limited has a tendency to play a bit more aggro.
That'll wreck you every time.
And people tend to forget about Calming.
That's why it wrecks you every time.
Calming is kind of annoying. Way more annoying in
is.
Limited than it is in Constructed, that's for sure.
Yep.
How about second pack here?
Hold on. Let's just a moment. Let's take a closer look here. I can't read these very well. What does these things say up here? All right, so we got Rookie Mistake and Diplomatic Debacle. So these are both a little bit tricky. So those are much greedier picks, I think. And then, of course, there's the Limestone there, which that's also pretty greedy. But man, if you get to get her out and keep her out, she's gonna mess your opponent up pretty bad. Okay, pack 2.
Pack 2.
Well, I know what GP's gonna pick.
Do you?
Too cool for school. Princess combo meal.
I, Giorno Giovanna,
I
have a
mean, yeah.
dream. That dream is to be able to play pink cards at any time.
This is
Ooh.
interesting. My
also
first thought is go for the Princess combo meal because it's some form of immediate speed, albeit soft removal, but also
Pack one,
extreme
pick one.
extreme
4
obstacle.
rec.
Yeah, extreme obstacle course. However, that's a card that will wreck people in Limited if you can get it going.
That's
what
a good
other
point.
packs are we opening? Is it just the set, or
I mean, if it is just fond memories, then I would probably have a tendency to go with Bonbon, actually, because so much of the set is designed
Handy
around
synergy.
exhausting cards, and that is a card that can get me into orange with a number of colorless resources or other cards as well. So I would probably favor Bonbon, and then over that, Citrine Spark, given that there's one other white card in this pack. Depending on what else came around, though, pink could be good. It really is just up to personal preference. However, if Ivory manages to get the extreme obstacle course, I'm going to be having a bad time.
Yeah, so the multicolor cards I think are more greedy plays here. Myself, if Grandpa's is where this deck is going next, I'm taking Bonbon. Sorry, GP. It's only business.
It's so rude. Just let me exhaust my stuff.
Otherwise,
No.
I'd probably have to look at Giorno pretty hard.
What Prism Light says here is a pretty common philosophy among MLPCCG limited players. Strat for draft, take all the entry. However, my question is, back then, when entry was fewer and far between and not very good, a lot of people just did take all the entry first, no matter what. Now, do you think that's still a good strategy?
I feel like it is both better and worse as a strategy in modern day than it was back then. It's better because the entry effects are just better, or like the stat lines on the cards are better. I would much rather play Citrian Spark or Giorno, who are, potentially 2 cost for 3 power friends, than I would play the Crystal Games cycle of entry that are 3 cost for 2 power friends.
Oh, garbage. Like,
Right?
even though the Crystal Games cards do have abilities on them, and some of them are actually kind of good.
That being said, you bring up a really good point, which is if you have a card that can carry you or provide significant momentum, especially early on in a game, and you are able to get enough entries so that you can play that card relatively reliably, then I would probably rather go for cards that will allow me to get payoff off of my entry rather than just drafting additional playable cards because they're just playable. I will go a little bit greedier on that than some other players do. I know some players will just pick whatever card they can guarantee they can play at any given point in time. And that's fine. You'll always be able to play a card, but playing 3 cost for 3 power friends every turn of the game is not how you win an aggro race.
And it really sucks when, you're getting to the end game and you need a little bit more, of an oomph out of your friends, and you end up with a handful of friends that don't do anything.
That just don't have the oomph.
Yeah.
So I will offer a not really dissenting opinion, but a contrasting one, which is yes, every turn coughing up a 3 power friend or 2 for 2 to 3 action tokens, not great. But if you can keep that up and the other person runs out of gas, and sometimes that's the only thing you need to win, is just not running out of gas.
I guess I would be more willing to take merely playable bodies with minor effects if my limited deck is going to have more disruption for my opponent.
Sure, that's fair. And now
Because
you can also go ultra greedy here and sit there and be like, all right, I'm pretty sure that a person, upstream of me or downstream of me is doing whatever. I'm going to take all the entry for that color and mess them up. Maybe not in strategy for beginners, but...
Right. That requires being able to read what people are drafting.
Right.
Right? If
Which
you
is hard.
consistently get a pack and don't see any blue, you can, you might be able to infer that whoever is sitting next to you is probably playing blue. Now, if you've already drafted some blue cards, does that mean you continue trying to get into blue? Or does that mean that you should switch to a different color to actually get a bunch of cards that would be good instead of having to fight somebody else over all the blue cards?
Well, the good news is that's why we go left, right, left, right. So if during pack 1 you're not seeing any blue come your way, well...
Maybe there was no blue in the pack.
I mean, there
Maybe.
might be blue coming your way. It's also entirely possible that the person playing blue is sitting halfway across the table from you instead of right next to you.
This is true.
There was one instance in me playing my cube with 4 players where it turns out that the other 3 players drafted yellow.
All 3 of them?
Now, I noticed that kind of early. I wonder why I haven't seen any yellow cards recently. So I drafted something like pink-purple and ran away with that match or with that draft because everybody else was fighting over all the yellow cards. Meanwhile, I had any pink-purple card I wanted.
When there is a draft archetype that's open for you, it's just one of the best feelings.
It's like Christmas.
It really is.
Yeah, because they just give you everything. You don't even have to fight for it.
Right? It's great.
Just like
Yeah.
Tempest Shadow and Grubber, love it. Starlight, love it. Food Fight, love it. Here-
Okay, if you pass a Starlight, even if you're playing yellow, like that's your own fault.
Yeah, it kind of is, yeah.
You
I
don't.
mean-
You need one purple to play that. Like
Look,
you
look.
can take that and run it.
No, you
Look.
hate draft that one.
You're right, but there is that one limited game where someone passed a Thunder Lane to Aura. So all I'm saying is weirder things have happened, okay?
Right. So like, there's 2 entry in here, right? If somehow Factory Jack magically teleported into this pack, would you still take the entry over it?
If Factory Jack teleported into this pack,
I'm always gonna pick Factory Jack.
I mean, Factory Jack is just kind of a ridiculous card, and it also has synergy with Bon Bon. Like, I'm gonna pick Factory Jack over Bon Bon, but I'm gonna hope that it wheels.
But yeah, would you pick it? But would you pick it over either Journo or Citron Spark?
It does depend a little bit. Like, if I haven't seen any entry in my color so far, I might be incentivized to give up an otherwise good card to the pack just because me having a launch at all is better than me having a spectacular launch or a spectacular time once I get off the ground.
Like, the idea here is, how good does a card have to be to, if your strat is to take all the entry, how good does a card have to be for you to ignore that?
3/3/3 Diligent 3.
I enjoy that you
But-
just hawk that up. Like,
I know what I'm about, son.
I'm aware you do. We're talking about what is her proper title? The Granny Smith.
Not Jar Judger.
Not
Saw.
Jar Judger.
Now, yeah, in this case, right, you have pink entry and white entry, and they're the same. Okay, if you're gonna take either one of those 2, how would you pick? Personally, I would think about what mains are available for me to play with. I believe there's a pink main and a white main in this set,
There sure
or
are.
available for for playing. So
No,
which one
I'm
would
sorry.
I pick?
There's not a white name.
Yes,
There's
there
a
is.
pink, purple, and yellow.
Well, if we're running with the
Oh, and Starlight. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
exactly, that's the point there. You know, we're all equal here.
Yeah, so I would, my choice between, well, which one I would pick would be also influenced by what main do I think I'm going to play. Right? A lot of the times when you're drafting and you just grab a bunch of entry, you end up with, you may be playing like blue pink. That's what you basically end up with. But then you have, 1 or 2 purple entry, 1 or 2 yellow entry, 1 or 2 white entry. And that just like makes things a little weirder for you.
It's true. Well, this has been a really good discussion on Limited, a format that I need to remind myself that I enjoy more than I think I do when I'm not actually sitting there playing it.
I mean, the
I'm
drafting
not-
experience is great.
The drafting experience is great. I'm not very good at Limited, but I do have a lot of fun every time I play it. And so I would encourage other players to try the same thing as well. Especially if you have the ability to participate in any kind of cube event where there's not really a cost associated with getting the cards that you need because someone else is already participating. Yes, because someone else has already borne that cost of obtaining all the cards and sleeving everything for you. Thank you, Pages.
Yes.
Yeah, there's. Don't forget, not only did I have to find 820 cards, I also had to sleeve 820 cards. And because a lot of these, like most of these cards are my personal collection of cards, and a lot of them are blinked out, that means I also double sleeve those cards. So that's 820
Aren't they
times 2
double
sleeves.
sleeved wrong? Don't you need to go and flip all of them?
Don't
No.
shame the cube creator here on stream. That's bad manners.
Right, then you have to
I'll get
assemble
into that argument another day.
Then you have to assemble the packs, which we did that once, and
Assembling the packs by now takes me roughly 1 hour to make 48 packs. An hour and a half depends on how distracted I am by everything else.
right, I think it took us 2 hours and several confused questions.
Yes. Because, I mean, you don't have to, right? You don't have to construct the packs the way I do, but because I like to seed my packs, I have to be careful about how I'm constructing them, right? Nothing, like I said, nothing is stopping you from just grabbing everything and shoving them all in.
I mean, those seeded packs definitely create a more consistent experience, though. So
Yeah. There's a balance between variance and consistency.
And, trying to hit the sweet spot is always the challenge.
Yeah.
But yes, if you ever get a chance to come and typically to a convention or something like that, or if you have, had played my cube in the past at a convention or wherever, and I'm always open for discussions about cube, my cube, if you want to make your own, anything about it. Always like to talk to people about that. And one of the best things I like about cube is being able to see card interactions that you almost never do. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, hey, what happens if a card from Premier interacts with a card from New Dawn in a certain way? Things happen, and it's always fun to watch.
absolutely.
But yes, please, make your own cube if you have the time. It's a great way to, take parts of your collection and use it again in some way or another.
Old
It
pony
does
cardboard
create.
still needs attention.
Pony cardboard does still need attention. Just like ponies need attention tomorrow, make sure you feed your Twilights.
Not touching this. Just not touching this at all.
It only costs what? How many were in that picture? Like 30? So what,
Borders.
$35?
Borders.
$35 in McDonald's burgers?
There you go.
That's too many.
Anyway, that will about wrap up our discussion on this topic
Yeah.
for today. I believe.
I do have plugs.
Do your plugs.
I have 2
We
plugs.
have several.
We have 3.
Oh, so we do. Alright, plug number 1. ADCO signups will be closing in about an hour. If you haven't read Discord chat, you probably want to.
It's going to be interesting.
This, yes, interesting is how I would put this. Yes. Let's see, we've got an online con that we're going to be hosting in sometime in March, so I should probably get the signups out for that. I think we're going to do core and, pretty topical, Fond Memory Sealed, since we need a post-release tournament. And I'll let one of you two do the next one because you're gonna do the thing.
What? Online con?
No, the next
Oh.
line.
Oh. Anyway, come to BabsCon.
Yeah, that one.
BabsCon.
It's a con.
It is a con, and it's happening this year, we think.
Babs
Most likely.
fly directly to San Francisco.
Please actually happen.
It looks like it's going to happen, which is good. BabsCon has always been one of the most enjoyable / maddening CCG conventions. There's always janky stuff that ends up there.
Yes.
And it's been one of the longest running ones for CCG support. We have had CCG events at BabsCon literally every year since its inception, which was in 2014. So that's up there with Everfree.
It is equivalent to Everfree. No, Everfree lapped it because Everfree happened one year and Babs didn't.
Oh, don't remind me.
Old wound.
Hold on. Anyway, yes, BabsCon will be fun. Easter weekend in April. There will be more information posted soon, but you can expect all kinds of both constructed and limited fun.
I don't know if I'll be there yet, but regardless of whether or not I will show up, I will try to get the cube to show up.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that very much, and I'm sure other players will as well. That cube's a very enjoyable experience. And, of course, thank you to Pages for all the work that you have done in developing this cube and refining it and bringing it around and damaging your shoulder carrying it down the streets.
I don't want to repeat that again, let's be honest.
That's fair. We probably won't make you do that.
But yeah, I would like to, any past or future players, I would like to thank you guys for taking the time to play it.
Absolutely. So with that, I believe that we'll wrap up our discussion on this topic today. We would like to give a big shout out to all our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. If you aren't currently a patron and you enjoy what we do, please consider donating, as doing so does enable us to continue making content like this and lets you earn some great perks as a bonus. If you have comments or questions you'd like to send our way, feel free to reach out to us through Facebook, Twitter, or email. If you're a patron, you can also chat live with us on Slack any day, anytime. And finally, if you're looking to watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel, linked just below the stream. With all that said, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here now and watching this recording later. We are, as always, Commentary is Magic. I am, as always, Grand Pause.
Big cheese.
Our cat.
Ivory Starlight.
And Pages, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Sign up for ADCO. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.